Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something profound, something that, well, touches every single one of us eventually. Old age and facing the end of life.
It's definitely a big topic, and maybe one we don't talk about enough.
Exactly. And often when we do, it's framed purely in terms of decline, loss, fear, really.
Yeah.
So the question we want to explore today is, how can Stoicism help us navigate this?
Can this ancient philosophy actually guide us through these final chapters?
Yeah. Can it transform how we see aging? Maybe turn it from something we dread into, I don't know, a time for reflection, wisdom, even courageous acceptance.
Well, that's certainly what the major Stoics aimed for. Figures like Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, they wrestled with these questions deeply. Their own lives weren't exactly quiet retreats either.
All right. Full of turmoil, loss, the reality of death.
Absolutely. And that's why their insights aren't just, historical footnotes. They feel incredibly relevant. They offer practical tools, I think, for dealing with our very modern anxieties about getting older, our health failing, and, well, mortality itself.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to dig into what these philosophers and some of their modern interpreters, too, have to say. Can we challenge those fears head on?
Can we maybe learn to embrace our place in the natural cycle, armed with a bit of philosophical resilience?
That's the hope. To see if we can reframe old age, maybe see it less as decline and more as,
Oh.
well, maybe even a culmination. Okay, so where do we even start with something this big? With Stoicism, it always seems to come back to one core idea, doesn't it?
You mean the dichotomy of control? Absolutely. It's the bedrock.
Yeah. It's not just philosophy 101, it's a practical framework for living, especially when things get tough, like facing aging or mortality.
Yeah.
It forces you to categorize things.
It really does. Epictetus, having been a slave himself, he knew a thing or two about what wasn't in his control. He laid it out pretty clearly.
How do you break it down?
Well, basically 3 categories. First, stuff that's completely in our control. Our thoughts, our judgments, our impulses, our decisions to pursue something or avoid it. Basically, as he put it, everything which is our own doing. Our character, essentially.
Okay. Our inner world.
Exactly. That's ours. Then there's stuff we have no control over whatsoever, like, will the sun rise tomorrow? Gravity. Those are just facts of the universe.
Right. External realities.
And then there's this interesting middle ground. Things we have some influence over, but not complete control. Winning a tennis match is the classic example he uses.
Ah, right. You can practice, play your best.
But you don't control your opponent, or the weather, or a lucky shot. Now, modern Stoics might tweak this slightly, maybe considering cognitive science and automatic thoughts, but that basic distinction between what's truly up to us and what isn't, it's still incredibly powerful, foundational, really.
So if we apply that directly to aging and death, it becomes pretty clear, doesn't it? If we pin our happiness on things outside our complete control.
Like perfect health forever, or looking young indefinitely, or living forever.
Yeah. We're basically setting ourselves up for, as one source puts it, frustration and disappointment. It's almost guaranteed suffering, because those things will change. They're not fully ours to command.
You're constantly fighting reality. And that leads right into the next crucial Stoic idea, indifference.
Okay, explain that.
Okay.
Because indifferent sounds like maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, yes and no. The Stoics argued that the only thing truly good is a virtuous character. Wisdom, justice, courage, moderation. The only thing truly bad is the opposite, a vicious character, everything else.
Health, wealth, reputation, possessions, even life itself.
Exactly. They called those indifference. Now, that doesn't mean you don't prefer health over sickness or life over death. Of course you do. Those are preferred indifference. But they aren't good or bad in terms of your fundamental moral worth or your capacity for genuine happiness, which comes from virtue.
So they don't determine your goodness.
Precisely. Cicero had some great analogies for this. He said, look, a single drop of honey doesn't make the whole Aegean Sea sweet. A penny doesn't make Croesus richer. One step doesn't get you to India.
Okay.
And an artificial light doesn't add much when the sun is blazing. In the same way, these external things, these indifference, don't actually add to the goodness of virtue, nor does their absence take away from your potential for happiness if your character is sound.
Wow, okay. So tying that all back to getting older, the physical decline, maybe losing certain abilities, even losing people we love. While these are incredibly hard, painful even,
Yes, deeply challenging.
they don't, in the Stoic view, have to diminish our actual goodness or our fundamental ability to be happy.
Correct, because our goodness, our potential for flourishing resides in our character, our judgments, our choices, the things that are within our control. That inner core remains no matter what happens externally. It's like an anchor.
Okay, so we have this foundation. Focus on what's in our control, our character. But how do we actively apply this to something as huge and scary as death itself? Seneca seems like the go-to guy for this, right?
Absolutely. And his life story gives his words extra punch. This wasn't some academic sitting in a library.
No kidding. Tutor to Emperor Nero, not exactly a calm boss. Then exile. Then being forced by Nero to commit suicide.
Yeah.
It was chaotic.
Far from the Stoic ideal of tranquility, that's for sure. Which makes his composure in writing about death all the more remarkable, I think. He lived it.
So what was his big piece of advice? It sounds a bit intense.
It does. He said, rehearse death.
Rehearse death. Okay, unpack that. Sounds kind of morbid.
Yeah, it can sound that way initially, but he didn't mean obsessing over dying in a gloomy way. It was more about familiarization, about stripping death of its terror by confronting it mentally.
How does that work? How does thinking about it make it less scary?
He argued that if you learn how to face death, if you truly accept its inevitability as a natural process, you unlearn how to be a slave.
A slave to what?
To anything, really. To fear, to tyrants, to misfortune. If you're not afraid of the ultimate end, what leverage does anyone or anything really have over you? He said someone who has learned how to die is above, or at any rate beyond the reach of all political powers. It's a kind of ultimate freedom.
That's a powerful idea. So it's not about wanting to die, but about freeing yourself from the fear of dying, which lets you live more bravely.
Exactly. And that leads to his next point, which is also quite striking. He identifies our love of life as the one chain holding us in fetters.
Whoa, our love of life is a chain. That sounds counterintuitive. We're supposed to love life.
Yeah, he's not saying we should hate life or be indifferent to it in the everyday sense. Of course, there's a natural love of life, but he means an excessive, clinging, fearful attachment to it.
Ah, okay. The kind of attachment that makes you terrified of losing it.
Precisely. When that love becomes desperation, it enslaves you. You become terrified of anything that might shorten your lifespan or diminish your vitality. Rehearsing death helps loosen that chain. It's about lessening the grip of that attachment so that when circumstances require it, illness, old age, whatever, you can let go with courage and acceptance, not be dragged away screaming in terror.
It's about preparedness then, not apathy.
Preparedness and perspective. And this ties right into another famous piece of his advice. Plan each one of our days as if it were our last.
Right. Which again, sounds intense, but probably isn't meant literally.
No, it's a motivational tool. Think about it. If you genuinely knew today was your last day, how would you spend it? You'd focus on what's truly important, wouldn't you? Meaningful connections, essential tasks, making peace. You wouldn't waste time on trivial nonsense.
Definitely not. You'd have this incredible clarity and urgency.
Exactly. And Seneca says since we don't know which day is our last, we should try to bring that sense of urgency and focus to every day. He warns that without that awareness, we could fritter away even 1,000 years on distractions.
So the goal isn't just to live longer.
No, the goal is to live fully in the time we have, to use each day deliberately, virtuously. This whole practice, rehearsing death, living each day as if it could be the last, cultivates a state where you neither long for nor fear the next day.
You're just present, living on your own terms.
Exactly. Free from being yanked around by desperate desires for more time or paralyzing anxieties about losing it. It's about valuing the present because you understand its finite nature.
Okay, so Seneca gives us this powerful tool of rehearsing death for inner freedom. Let's shift now to Epictetus. His life story is just incredible.
It really is. Born a slave, physically lame, possibly due to mistreatment, owned by one of Nero's nasty officials.
Epaphroditus, yeah.
Yeah.
Then later exiled from Rome. Just immense hardship.
Yet he becomes this hugely influential philosopher. His teachings, luckily recorded by his student Arrian, even shaped Marcus Aurelius, the emperor. It's quite a journey.
Someone called his teaching the West's answer to Buddhism's Dhammapada, which speaks volumes about its focus on inner peace and practical wisdom, right?
Absolutely. And central to his view on accepting things like aging and death is his idea of being a citizen of the world.
A citizen of the world. What does that mean in this context?
It means seeing ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as integral parts of a larger, rational, interconnected cosmos, part of the divine administration, as he called it, or universal nature.
Okay, like a piece of a bigger puzzle.
Exactly. And from that perspective, he says something that sounds, well, pretty stark at first. He suggests a good person, someone who understands this cosmic order, would actually cooperate towards his own sickness and death and mutilation.
Whoa. Cooperate towards sickness and death. That sounds harsh. Maybe even fatalistic.
It does sound harsh out of context, but he means understanding that these things are assigned to him according to the universal arrangement. It's part of the bigger picture. And crucially, the whole is superior to the part and the state to the citizen.
So it's not about wanting bad things to happen.
No, not at all. It's about accepting what does happen as part of a larger, ultimately rational in the Stoic view process. Resisting it is like a single note complaining about its place in the symphony.
Adam Smith used an analogy from Epictetus to explain this, didn't he? Something about a foot.
Yes, the foot analogy. Smith explained it beautifully. Just like a foot sometimes has to get muddy or even be amputated for the good of the whole body.
For the body to survive.
So too must we as individuals sometimes accept hardship, sickness, poverty, even an early death for the sake of the larger cosmic whole. To complain bitterly about our assigned part, Epictetus argued, is to misunderstand our place, to essentially cease to be a man, meaning to act against our rational nature within this interconnected system.
So the strength comes from aligning yourself with that bigger picture. Accepting your role.
Yes, accepting your role within the rationally ordered whole. That alignment is the source of tranquility. It's not passive resignation, it's active, rational assent to reality.
And that idea of assent, of reasoned choice, is key for Epictetus, isn't it?
Absolutely central. He constantly stressed that we don't control external events, getting sick, losing someone. Those are the stimuli. But we do control our judgment about those stimuli. We control whether we assent to or withhold assent from the presentation of those stimuli as something good or evil.
That pause between event and reaction.
Exactly. That's where our freedom lies. We can choose not to automatically approve the impression that, say, getting old is terrible or death is the ultimate evil. We can withhold that assent, avoid impulsive reactions, and instead choose the best possible reaction, a reasoned response aligned with our values.
It's like catching that first automatic thought, oh no, this is awful, and examining it before it takes root.
Precisely. The Stoics even talked about first movements. The initial shock, the tears welling up, those are natural reflexes. But they only become full-blown disturbing passions when our mind agrees with the judgment that something truly bad has happened. That moment of assent is critical. Mastering that is crucial for staying calm amidst the storms of life, especially the challenges of aging.
It makes sense then why Epictetus said a philosopher's school is like a doctor's office.
Yeah.
He said the goal isn't pleasure, it's pain.
The pain of confronting and correcting our mistaken beliefs.
Especially those deeply ingrained fears and judgments about getting old and dying.
Hmm.
He saw those as like diseases of the mind that needed treatment through philosophy.
Right, through rigorous self-examination and applying these principles. It's work, definitely, but the payoff is inner peace.
Okay, from Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, let's turn to Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor. His meditations are so fascinating because they weren't meant for publication, right? They were his personal notes.
Exactly, his private journal, essentially. Written during difficult times, too, managing the empire, dealing with wars on the frontier, plagues. It makes his reflections on life's impermanence feel very grounded.
He really hammers home this idea of the present moment, doesn't he? He writes something like, each man lives only the present moment. The rest is either spent and gone or is quite unknown.
Yes, and also reminding himself how small our existence is. Very little time. In a small corner of the earth, and the longest surviving fame is but short.
Which could sound depressing, maybe nihilistic. But for him, it seems it was liberating.
It was perspective-giving. He used this vast cosmic gaze to put human troubles, including aging and death, into context. He famously wrote, "To suffer change can be no hurt."
Because the hurt comes from our judgment about the change, not the change itself.
Precisely. He saw the whole universe as this constantly flowing river, a flood and swift current, where things appear and then pass away, replaced by the next thing. It's constant transformation.
So sickness, death, misfortune. They aren't exceptions to the rule.
Not at all. He saw them as perfectly normal, as usual and ordinary as a rose in the spring and fruit in summer. Not random chaos, but part of the natural ordered process, an admirable correspondence and affinity within the whole system.
He had that great analogy of the headland, the promontory.
Yes. The promontory of the sea against which the waves, adversity, change, loss constantly beat, but the promontory itself stands, and about it are those swelling waves stilled and quieted.
That's such a powerful image of the Stoic mind, steadfast amidst the chaos.
It really is, maintaining that inner stability, that calm judgment, no matter what life throws at you.
But, okay, how does that cosmic perspective actually provide comfort? The idea that everything's just part of this vast, maybe indifferent universal flow?
Yeah.
Couldn't that feel a bit bleak?
Well,
Or make you feel insignificant?
That's a really important question. Marcus addresses this directly. He basically says, look, there are two possibilities, either a providence or Democritus his atoms.
Meaning either the universe is guided by a rational, purposeful order.
Providence, yes. Or it's just a mere confused mass of random atoms colliding, like the ancient atomist philosopher Democritus suggested.
Okay, two options.
And he argues, if it's just random chaos, why would you even want to stick around in that meaningless mess? But if it is an ordered system, administered by Providence, then our efforts towards virtue aren't in vain. We can be quiet and patient, trusting the governor of all.
So the comfort comes from trusting in that underlying order, believing it's rational, purposeful.
Yes. And crucially, he believed this providence ensures that true evils, which he defined as vice and wickedness, are placed entirely within our own power to avoid. External things like sickness, aging, death, they can't be truly evil if they're part of this natural, rational order and outside our direct control. The only real harm comes from compromising our own character.
So our virtue is the one thing that truly matters and is truly safe, in a sense.
That's the core idea. And this leads him to constantly urge himself to cultivate his inner citadel.
The inner fortress.
Right, that rational, commanding part within us, our reason, our judgment. He believed this inner core maketh both itself to be and everything that happeneth to appear unto itself as it will itself. It's the seat of our interpretation, our meaning-making.
It shapes our reality.
It absolutely does. Our true happiness, he says, lies in this rational mind being able to pass through all things, remaining free and adaptable like fire moving upwards or a cylinder rolling smoothly downhill. We should be content with that power, he urges, and seek not after any other thing.
Even as the body ages and weakens, that inner citadel can remain strong.
That's the Stoic promise. The mind's capacity for virtue, for rational judgment, isn't dependent on physical health. It's the ultimate refuge.
And when it came to actually facing death, Marcus had some very specific, quite poignant advice. He suggested thinking about how even our loved ones might, on some level, be ready for us to go.
Right. Wishing me to be gone, as he put it. Not out of malice, but perhaps out of weariness with our suffering, or just the natural progression of things. He saw this realism as a way to depart with the less regret.
It's bracingly honest.
It is. And he also stressed the importance of how we depart. Not becoming bitter or resentful, go off less benign, but instead preserve your own manners and continue. Friendly, benevolent, and propitious.
Maintain your character to the very end.
Exactly. Because death ultimately is one of the things according to nature. So we should accept it peacefully, as from relations, without reluctance. It's the final act of aligning ourselves with the natural order. #tag5. Navigating grief and cultivating inner wisdom.
Now, one of the biggest stereotypes about Stoics is that they're, well, emotionless, that they don't feel grief or sadness. But the sources seem clear. The belief that Stoics never grieve, although widely held, is mistaken.
Yes, that's a crucial clarification. It's probably the #1 reason people misunderstand or dismiss Stoicism. They think it demands suppressing natural human feelings, which is impossible and unhealthy.
So how do they actually view grief? Seneca, who lost a son, must have had insights here.
He did. He stated pretty clearly, nature requires from us some sorrow, while more than this is the result of vanity. He acknowledged that initial pang of grief, the sorrow, is natural.
Like those first movements we talked about with Epictetus.
Exactly. The involuntary physiological responses, the tears, the tightness in the chest, the initial shock. The Stoics saw these as natural reflexes, not yet full-blown passions or emotions in their technical sense.
So when does it become a problem, in their view?
It becomes a problematic passion when the mind assents to a judgment about the loss, like, this is an unbearable evil, my life is ruined. and then acts on that judgment in a way that disrupts reason. Seneca said, fear involves flight, anger involves assault. Grief, when it becomes excessive, involves a kind of withdrawal from rational life, a paralysis. The goal isn't to not feel the initial sorrow, but to manage it, to not let the judgment about the sorrow overwhelm your reason.
So it's about acknowledging the feeling, but managing the interpretation and the reaction.
Precisely. Control the assent to the judgment that makes it catastrophic.
Seneca also argued that grief hits us harder because we fail to anticipate loss.
Yes, exactly. He said we don't anticipate it. We see misfortune happen to others constantly, but rarely do we stop to contemplate how we might respond if it happened to us. We live as if we and our loved ones are immortal.
Which leaves us completely unprepared when reality hits.
Utterly unprepared and vulnerable. This is where that Stoic practice of negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, comes in. By mentally rehearsing potential losses, loss of health, loss of loved ones, our own death, not morbidly but realistically, we build resilience. It allows us, as Seneca said, to accommodate ourselves to any outcome. Preparedness lessens the shock.
It's like emotional strength training.
That's a great way to put it. And this preparedness mindset connects to how some Stoics viewed old age itself, not just as something to endure, but as a time for cultivating inner wisdom.
How so?
Well, look at Musonius Rufus, Epictetus's teacher. He was a big advocate for simple living. He even suggested occasionally practicing voluntary discomfort. Things like deliberately underdressing in cold weather, or sleeping on a hard bed, maybe skipping a meal.
Why on earth would you do that?
Paradoxically, he argued, it actually increases your enjoyment of life because it makes you appreciate comforts more when you have them, and crucially, it makes you less dependent on them.
Yeah.
It builds resilience against the involuntary discomforts that inevitably come with aging or misfortune. If you can handle chosen hardship, you're better prepared for unchosen hardship.
That makes sense. Building toughness.
And he also saw value in things like manual labor, like farming, not just for physical health, but because it provides, in his words, abundant leisure for the soul to do some deep thinking and to reflect. He saw physical work freeing the mind for philosophical reflection, for becoming wiser.
Which connects directly to old age. Potentially a time with less physical demand, but more time for that kind of inner work.
Exactly. It frames old age as an opportunity for intellectual and spiritual deepening, a time to cultivate the mind when the body might be less capable.
It reminds me of that story Montaigne tells, based on Seneca, about the blind fool. The woman who lost her sight but didn't realize it kept complaining the house was dark.
Yes, a striking anecdote.
Montaigne's point was that we're often like that fool. No one knows himself to be avaricious or grasping. We look for the cause of our problems outside ourselves. We seek our disease out of ourselves. But often, he says, it's in us and planted in our bowels.
Our flaws, our fears, our mistaken judgments, they're internal.
And the hardest part is, if we don't even perceive our own sickness, our own flawed thinking about aging or death, it's more hard to be cured. It just highlights the absolute necessity of self-awareness, introspection, especially as we get older and face limitations. We need to see the darkness within ourselves.
Unflinching self-assessment, absolutely key to applying any of this wisdom effectively. Hashtag TAC6, enduring relevance for you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. The dichotomy of control, Seneca's rehearsal of death, Epictetus's cosmic view, Marcus Aurelius's inner citadel, dealing with grief. What does this all boil down to for you, listening now, dealing with modern life?
I think it offers incredibly relevant tools. We live in a culture that often seems terrified of aging, obsessed with youth, and pushes death away into hospitals and hushed tones. Stoicism provides a powerful counter-narrative.
A way to face those fears directly.
Yes. And to challenge some of the sources of our unhappiness, think about what Seneca and Adam Smith called comparative miseries.
Comparative miseries.
Yeah. Smith pointed out how often we're unhappy, not because something truly bad has happened, but because we lack some fictitious good that others seem to possess. We compare ourselves constantly. He called wealth and status trinkets of frivolous utility. They don't actually guarantee peace of mind.
They don't make you fundamentally happier than someone with less, if your mind is well disposed.
Exactly. And as we age, often those external markers we compare, maybe career peaks, physical appearance, they naturally start to fade, which can be difficult, but it can also force a shift inward. It can compel us to ask what really matters, what gives life value beyond these comparisons.
It strips away the superficial.
It can, yes. And a well-disposed mind, as Smith said, can find contentment in ordinary circumstances, regardless of external comparisons. Stoicism helps cultivate that well-disposed mind.
This focus on inner state and finding meaning even in hardship makes me think of Viktor Frankl. Obviously different context. Logotherapy isn't Stoicism, but there's a resonance there.
There definitely is. Frankl, surviving the concentration camps, discovered that finding meaning was this incredible source of resilience. And that meaning wasn't abstract. It was discovered, experienced, and lived out in choices that engaged the circumstances of life.
Choosing your attitude, your response, even in the worst conditions.
Precisely. And that resonates deeply with the Stoic emphasis on our power to choose our judgments, our assent, our actions. To find purpose and maintain our virtue even when facing suffering, aging, or the end of life. Mortality itself becomes an impetus to live meaningfully now.
So it comes back to that core Stoic idea. Freedom of choice. Not freedom from difficult circumstances, but freedom in how we respond to them.
That's the heart of it, that self-mastery over our inner world. Schopenhauer, who wasn't always a fan of the Stoics, still acknowledged that this kind of rational self-command was the highest point to which man can attain by the mere use of his faculty of reason.
It's the ultimate source of strength and peace, isn't it? Realizing that while you can't control the waves, you can learn to steer your ship right up until the final harbor.
Beautifully put. That's the Stoic promise for navigating old age and the end of life. Hashtag tag tag outro.
So we've taken quite a journey today. From Seneca's breathing call to rehearsed death for freedom, through Epictetus finding his place in the cosmos, to Marcus Aurelius building his inner citadel against the storms of life. What stands out is that Stoicism doesn't offer a denial of aging or death. Not at all.
No, it's deeply realistic about them.
But it offers a profound reframing. It suggests that these final chapters don't have to be just about decline. They can be a time for meaning, for wisdom, for freedom, for demonstrating our character.
It really shifts the focus inward to what we can control, our judgments, our responses, our virtue.
The invitation for you then is to reflect on this, to maybe examine your own fears and assumptions about getting older, about loss, about the end, and to remember that Stoic insight. The power to face these things with courage, with tranquility, lies within your own mind.
It's a lifelong practice, of course, not a quick fix. But the tools are there, within reach, in how you choose to interpret and respond to life.
And to leave you with something to really chew on. If accepting death as natural frees us from its tyranny, what if we deliberately started seeing every challenge, every frustration, every loss in life, big or small, as a kind of rehearsal, a practice run for cultivating that ultimate freedom and resilience? How might that change how you live, starting today?